You don't know it really until you test one way or another. One of the other issues, Candida yeast overgrowth. In fact, I'm going to advance through these slides a little bit because this, and this bring us to an understanding that sometimes when you have cravings for carbohydrates, sometimes those cravings aren't necessarily yours. Sometimes we have things occupying our internal environment that are giving us cravings for the things that are designed to feed them, and in the process not be so beneficial for you. And you know, a lot of people have symptoms. I mean, many of us are familiar with some of the symptoms, you know, of Candida, Candida yeast. It can be, IBS type symptoms, fibromyalgic type symptoms. Chronic fatigue is really common with that. Anxiety-related issues are really common. Brain fog is really common. If you're experiencing some of these issues, then this is a sort of testing you might want to look to do. And with respect to parasites, and they're not all, the picture was showing mostly worms, but obviously there are different types there are protozoa, there are spirochetes, there are amoeba-type parasites, and they very often will, again, inject things into you that cause you to crave the things that are going to benefit them. And, of course, dysbiosis and SIBO, some of you might not be familiar with. I don't know how many of you heard the Paleo Summit talk by Dr. Alison Seebecker. She's a good friend of mine in Portland, Oregon. She's a naturopathic doctor, and her specialty is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. The research in this has only been out for about 2 years now. I mean, that's how new it is. What's really, really troubling about that is that what's being discovered is that there are, of course, there's the type of dysbiosis that is the large intestinal dysbiosis everybody thinks of, right? Everybody's taking acidophilus and doing the cultured foods and all these kinds of things, and maybe prebiotics like inulin and whatever to get the healthy wildlife going. But the small intestine, although it's not supposed to be a sterile environment, it's also not supposed to be host to large colonies of bacteria. And what's showing up is that people's small intestines, this is very common, by the way, in people with gluten sensitivity and celiac disease. They found this a lot, that the small intestine is getting occupied by large colonies of these rod-shaped gram-negative bacteria that have never before been discovered in humans. And they think this has something to do with the genetic modification of the food supply. So we have things happening to us that, again, would probably never have happened to our ancient ancestors, but we've got to deal with now. And these things will stimulate carbohydrate cravings, and any amount of carbohydrate is going to feed these organisms and generate and perpetuate leaky gut problems. So, and it's serious. And some of the things that we do to try to deal with conventional dysbiosis might actually make SIBO worse. So, not to freak you all out or anything, but you can go to Alison Seebecker's site. It's siboinfo.com, and it's a great resource, so you can go and kind of screen some of these things. IBS symptoms are a classic, with that, but also mood symptoms like depression are very common markers with things like SIBO, and also malabsorptive syndromes and anemia, whether it's clinical anemia or functional anemia. Is a potential issue, and also chronically low ferritin levels is another really common marker that you see with this, because what's happening is these little critters are clustering around your microvilli, and they're gobbling up your nutrients so that you don't get to. So malabsorption ends up being a big problem. Moving right along.